I want to talk to you today about my coaching program, Doable. It's interesting. I think it actually came about pretty much by accident, or my whole journey into health and coaching was brought about by some health challenges that I had. I'd found out that I had heart disease, and my daughter was doing CrossFit and said, "Hey, have you ever heard of paleo?" I'm like, man, that's some fad diet, you know. But I realized that what I'd been doing wasn't working, so I was like, all right, what do I have to lose? Let me check this out. So Robb Wolf had a book called The Paleo Solution. I'll never forget, I read that and it just like kind of blew my mind. I was like, why haven't I heard about this before? And what he talks about is that for all practical purposes, we're hunter-gatherers, right? I mean, if you look at the evolutionary biologists been saying this for years, that genetically we're virtually identical to our ancestors 100,000 years ago. Well, we've taken that same genetics and dropped it into our current environment. And if you wonder, well, is that problematic? All you have to do is kind of look around and see how people are struggling. Here's an interesting comparison. Just go back and look at how were people getting along 100 years ago. We didn't have all the problems with obesity, diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's. Sure, people were worried about infections, but for the most part, obesity was it just really was not an issue. And I was like, okay, so why haven't people heard about this? Then I heard a number that kind of put it in a context. 100 years ago, the average American had 2 pounds of sugar a year. That's what they consumed. Imagine what the number is now. 152 pounds of added sugar a year. You think about it, the average American by Wednesday has already consumed as much sugar as what that same American would have consumed 100 years ago. So the reason that you don't hear about it is because there's too much money to be made selling people crummy food. When was the last time you saw a Super Bowl commercial about grass-fed beef or wild-caught salmon or asparagus? You know, asparagus just doesn't have a very good marketing budget. So what I understood was that, you know, the more I dug into this, the more I realized that sugar was, in essence, kind of a misery fertilizer. My mom battled cancer pretty much my whole childhood, from the time I was in the 2nd grade until I was in college. And when I began to understand that, hey, when your body makes insulin in response to the sugar, and insulin can act like cancer fertilizer. In fact, in cancer labs, if they're trying to grow cancer cells in a medium and it's not growing, they just add a little insulin to it and it just takes off. So imagine how much misery and heartache are brought about by the diets that we've been eating. And look, I'm not trying to suggest that, hey, if my mom would have eaten a paleo diet, she would have never had cancer. No, but what I can say absolutely is that she would have been stronger and more resilient and in better position to be able to battle back. You know, I look at how many people struggle with health issues. They struggle with diets. You know, it's the proverbial, you know, they're always on some kind of a diet. I mean, I did my share of them too. It's like, okay, how long can somebody eat cabbage soup? So somebody starts it, you know, they do a little better, and all of a sudden, you know, 2 or 3 weeks later, they get tired of being hungry all the time, or they get tired of being miserable because whatever they're eating's not agreeing with them. They go back to what they were doing before, and they beat themselves up because they consider that they failed at it. And the failure is that we haven't taught people about how to give our bodies what they're looking for. So doable is my answer to that. I want to help people take the struggle out of getting and staying healthy. So doable is a 24-week program. And people have gone, well, like, man, that seems like a long time. This is not about a diet. It's about helping people build a lifestyle that will support them for the rest of their life. So doable is 24 weeks. It's all over Zoom. It's based around food, movement, and recovery. The first week is a 2-hour Zoom call because we go into what's your why, what's worked for you before, what you're trying to get accomplished, and we build a program to help support you through that journey. That first call's 2 hours. For the next 11 weeks, the Zoom calls are 1 hour a week. And here's I think one of the vital parts. There's a daily check-in. So we do text check-in. So you let me know how you're doing, what you're eating that day, what you're doing to move. You let me know how it's working. And if you've got struggles, we get those resolved. So because the goal is to keep you on track and moving forward. But here's the other part, the reason it's a 6-month program. You're gonna stumble. And what happens to a lot of people? They stumble and they're like, man, there's no point in keeping on with this. I'm gonna go back to doing what I was doing before. You gotta give yourself the time to build the habits and to start feeling and experiencing the wins, because you'll definitely have the wins. So food, the first thing we do in that 2-hour call, we do a pantry purge, right? You get rid of the stuff that's getting in your way of your progress. It's like, okay, we've got that out. Now, what do we put back in? We put in real food. So we focus on making sure that you always have food available so that it makes this doable and easy. It's not something that's a struggle week in and week out. I introduced you to some of the tools that I use to make meal prep and cooking a lot easier. In fact, right now I'm cooking a steak. This is a sous vide. I got a steak in here that was frozen. It's sitting in this sous vide. It'll be done in about 40 minutes, and I'm just going to throw it in a cast iron skillet to give it a sear. And I'll probably have like some asparagus and maybe some sweet potatoes with it. Not exactly a hardship. Dessert, probably some dark chocolate. What I want people to understand is that real food can taste remarkable. One of the things that we do early on is I show you how to make some real simple sauces. So you don't feel like you're eating the same thing day in and day out. In fact, to make sure that you don't, I built this whole food matrix that we go over every week. So you're going, yeah, all right, I'm going to do these proteins, here's the vegetables, and I'll even challenge you going, okay, find a vegetable in here you've never fixed before and prep that. We look at different ways to make cooking fish easy. I think what you find really quickly is that your body has been begging for this stuff all along. We focus a lot on nutrient density, and it's like, okay, what's that? It basically is what your body is saying, hey, give me more of this. And when you do that, you're not hungry all the time. I think when I first started looking at this, I'm like, okay, so this means I have to be a recluse. I have to stay home all the time. No, you can go out to restaurants. We look at we'll pick restaurants that you like going to. We'll look at the menus and go, hey, here's some great ways to go in there and have the meal something that's not going to blow up your progress. But here's the other piece that's important with this. This is not like, oh man, you're never going to get to have a pizza again. Right? It's just that pizza's not going to be your go-to. Like I tell folks, if it's your kid's birthday, you're going to eat the cake. And the next day, you're going to get back on your journey again. Because this isn't about a diet, it's about a lifestyle. It's something that is going to support you for the rest of your life. So that's just like a glimpse of the food. The movement piece is also essential. And what we do with this is not one of those, boot camps where you're so sore that the next day that you don't even want to move, and it's like, man, I'm not going to exercise again for months. I mean, in the very beginning, exercise is just getting out and going for a walk. Okay? It's finding opportunities throughout the day to work movement in. We work on things called exercise snacks. It may be that, hey, you've been sitting down for a while, you get up and do some air squats, you do some push-ups. There's a 7-minute workout, you'll take pieces of that and spread it throughout the day. Because doable changes, as you gain extra energy and you start feeling better, all of a sudden it's like, hey, wait a minute, how about if we work in some kettlebells? But it's at your pace. One of the things that we do in the very beginning is that we work on balance and stability, because a lot of people dive right into the, hey, I want to get strong, and then they end up getting hurt. So we want to build this strong, stable foundation that we build everything else on. And then let's talk a little bit about recovery. That was the part that I kind of skipped for the longest time. It's like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Little did I know, I was working on a strategy where I wasn't going to have to wait so long. Recovery is essential. The part that everybody's familiar with is sleep. And we work on how do you set up, it's called sleep hygiene. But how do you set up your environment to make it easier to fall asleep and to stay asleep? But there's other parts of recovery that are also essential. We look at stress management strategies. One of the ones that was kind of a new discovery for me was mindfulness or meditation. And I used to be like, I don't have time for that. Now, my meditation sessions are typically 10 minutes. And I can tell the days that I do it and the days that I don't. So that's a key piece. Another one is that we start looking at, what are you doing that kind of brings you joy? What do you do to play? Because that is also a way that you kind of take some of the stress out. My goal is to help you discover that resilient, strong, happy version of you that's been there all along. It's just waiting for an invitation to the party. And you can think about that. That's really what Doable is all about. It's helping support that inner resilient version. Now, 6 months is a long time to spend with somebody. So I think it's important that both of us make sure that we're in alignment about what you're trying to get accomplished, and that my approach syncs up with what you're looking for. So I would encourage you to schedule a 30-minute call. It's a free session, and I promise it. But even if we decide that we're not going to work together, I'm going to make sure that you get something that's actionable and valuable that you can take away from that call. Thanks. I look forward to talking with you.